Welcome to a guided meditation based on the prayer of recollection. Before we get started, I want to let you know what's coming. Today we're going to do a guided walkthrough of a good way to implement the TACS approach in your prayer of recollection time. TACS is an acronym for T, teaching, A, adoration, C, confession, and S is supplication. You will find a link in the description below this video for more detail on TACS. TACS is a great way to guide your mind through meditation. In this recording, we will explore how to use TACS on just one verse of a section, and also how to use TACS as a garland, as Martin Luther explained. Are you ready? Let's jump in. To begin our time of meditation, I invite you to slow your breathing down and bring your attention to Jesus within you. Look at him with eyes of love, and imagine him looking back at you with love. With your attention on Jesus, notice any tension in your body and release that. As you begin to slow your mind and breathing down, you may notice distractions. That's totally normal. You can pause the recording now and take this moment to acknowledge any distractions in your mind. You might say, I am distracted by or worried about, and fill in the blank. And then, I trust you with this, Jesus, for each distraction. Rejoin when you're ready. Today we're going to be reading Luke 1:57 through 66 from the NIV. As we read, keep your attention on the Spirit of Jesus within you, and imagine that you're right there in the situation as it happened. When it was time for Elizabeth to have her baby, she gave birth to a son. Her neighbors and relatives heard that the Lord had shown her great mercy, and they shared her joy. On the 8th day, they came to circumcise the child, and they were going to name him after his father Zechariah. But his mother spoke up and said, "No, he's to be called John." They said to her, "There is no one among your relatives who has that name." Then they made signs to his father to find out what he would like to name the child. He asked for a writing tablet, and to everyone's astonishment, he wrote, "His name is John." Immediately his mouth was opened and his tongue set free, and he began to speak, praising God. All the neighbors were filled with awe, and throughout the hill country of Judea, people were talking about all these things. Everyone who heard this wondered about it, asking, "What then is this child going to be?" For the Lord's hand was on him. When you're using TACS to meditate on one verse on your own, as you are imagining being right in the situation we read about, it's helpful to spend time thinking through each of the verses. After spending some time taking in the whole section, choose a verse that stands out to you or that gets your attention. To keep us all together in this meditation today, I'm going to choose a shared verse for us to meditate on that stood out to me. We're going to dig down into verse 64. Spirit of Jesus, please guide our hearts and our minds to what you want us to see here and to understand your word for us. I'm going to read us verse 64 again and also 63 for context. He asked for a writing tablet, and to everyone's astonishment he wrote, "His name is John." Immediately his mouth was opened and his tongue set free, and he began to speak, praising God. As we look at this verse, we want to first explore the teachings. There are two questions in teachings that can be really helpful. One question is, what does this teach us about God, who he is and what he does? The second question is, what does this teach us about humanity, or about ourselves, who we are, and who we should be? Here are some of the teachings that stood out to me. The silence that God's angel, Gabriel, had given Zechariah was immediately undone when Zechariah stepped out in obedience in naming John. Zechariah's silence was not broken by God at the birth of John, and was not broken when Elizabeth stated what Zechariah said his name was to be. It seems that Zechariah had to make his own step of faith before he was given his freedom. After months of silence, what bursts out of Zechariah's mouth is praise. Zechariah was not spewing bitterness or self-pity, but praise. Zechariah was not gushing over this miraculous gift. He was gushing in adoration of the giver. I'm going to read this verse again and invite you to identify any other teachings that come to your mind. Immediately his mouth was opened and his tongue set free, and he began to speak, praising God. Pause now, and after you've identified any additional teachings, rejoin to continue. Now, to move forward with TACS today, we'll pick one special teaching from our one special verse. For this meditation, our teaching is going to be that, after months of silence, what bursts out of Zechariah's mouth is praise. Having selected this teaching for our focus, we're going to metaphorically wrap adoration, confession, and supplication around that teaching, as if we were creating a garland. Adoration. Here we pause to look at what we adore about God relative to this teaching. God, I adore that when we truly see your greatness, you change our minds and our hearts to praise and worship instead of self-pity, insecurity, or doubt. I sit with the beauty of thinking about living in a place where praise is what is longing to come out of my mouth. Pause now as you sit with this adoration, and you may also want to identify additional adorations for this teaching. Next, we turn our minds to confession. What is the Spirit prompting you to confess relative to our teaching, which is, after months of silence, what bursts out of Zechariah's mouth is praise? I would like to confess that praise is not what is always longing to come out of my mouth. I invite you to pause now and think about the last 24 hours and identify specifically when praise was not in your mindset or your words. Rejoin when you're ready. Lord, I'm sorry that I've let my mind drift from your greatness to negativity or complaining or self-doubt or self-pressure, or any of the places that my mind goes when I lose my grip on you. I receive your forgiveness. And I allow a sense of gratitude and praise to wash over me now. Pause now as you let yourself experience this. Finally, we turn to supplication, meaning, what would we like to ask God to supply us relative to this teaching, which is, after months of silence, what bursts out of Zechariah's mouth is praise. This is my prayer of supplication. God, I ask that you will help me to keep my mind with you throughout my day, moment by moment, breath by breath, bringing my mind back to your greatness again and again. May my heart well up with praise for you. And as I worship you and praise you in my mind, may your goodness spill out in my speech and my actions. May my life look more and more like you. Just as you have rescued me and heaped unearned love and forgiveness on me, may I spill love out onto people around me, from the people I live and work with, to the people in our community who are disadvantaged and vulnerable. Fill me with yourself, Lord. Please lead my heart back to you, and back to you, and back to you. And now we close with an extra question that is often helpful at the end of a time of prayer of recollection. Lord, why did you bring this to my mind right now? Pause now for praying and journaling through this question and rejoin when you're ready. As we close, I pray, Lord, we ask you to stay with us in each moment, that we will know the bliss of flying into your arms for you to transform us with your greatness far more than we ourselves would intend. We praise you, Jesus.